All right, everyone, we're going to get going in like 2 minutes. Just going to give people a couple minutes more to arrive. All right, everyone, we are going to get going. I'm calling this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. I'm Kenzie Bach. I'm the District 8 City Councilor. That's the district that runs from the West End to Mission Hill. And I'm also the chair of the Council's Ways and Means Committee. And we're in the middle of our budget process right now. Well, we really just started it. So we'll be having 35 hearings and working sessions throughout tail end of this month, all of May, beginning in June, to consider the draft budget that was filed by the mayor's administration, and then go back and forth about what the final version of that should look like in June. But throughout that process, we have opportunities for public testimony. We do have those opportunities at the end of every department hearing, but we know that department hearings, sometimes you have to wait for the whole department presentation, and most of them are during the day, and that can be hard for people to make. So for that reason, we prioritized having 6 p.m. public testimony dedicated hearings to just let the public weigh in and say, especially in this year, what you would like to see our priorities be for the recovery. And those are budget priorities, both with the city's general fund dollars and our operating budget for city programs and city stuff that you'd like to see expanded, and then also the federal funding that I think many people are aware of that the city is receiving from the American Rescue Plan, which is going to be supporting those kinds of city services, and also has the opportunity to support kind of broader economic recovery grant type programs. So in that context, we wanted to make sure we had one of these early. We're also going to have several of them later in the process because I know that some folks' ideas and thoughts on that are still in formation, but we wanted to make sure we had one early. So just in terms of some of the logistics that I've got to read through, this hearing is being recorded. It's being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv, and it's broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. If you're watching right now and you want to join us, if you go to, well, if you just email ccc.wm, that's M as in mother, ccc.wm@boston.gov, we can get you the link to come join us and offer your testimony. You can also go on boston.gov/budget-testify and sign up. We'd love to have you come and join us in the Zoom tonight. We've got some folks here already, but it would be great to have you. And then for your calendar, if you're watching this later and you're like, oh no, I missed this, and 6 p.m. is the right time for me, we're gonna have another one at 6 p.m. on May 25th and at 6 p.m. on June 3rd. So those are kind of our 3 evening dedicated public testimony hearings along the way to hear from you all. You can also go on that website I mentioned, boston.gov/budget-testify in order to submit written comments to us about the budget or submit a video, which we can then append to a future department hearing. So we hope you're going to find a way to get involved. You can find out about all the department hearings when they're scheduled and everything at boston.gov/council-budget. Or tweet us your questions, #BossBudget, BOSBudget. So technically this is a hearing on a bunch of dockets, which collectively make up the City Council's budget consideration process. So those are dockets 0524 to 0526, orders for the FY22 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations for the school department and for other post-employment benefits. Orders 0527 to 0528, which are orders for capital fund transfer appropriations, and docket 0529 to 0531, orders for the capital budget, including loan orders and lease purchase agreements. And as I said, our focus tonight is really public testimony about what you want to see in an equitable recovery, what you want to see us devoting city resources to. So therefore, there's not going to be a presentation from the administration or departments. We're going to be jumping straight to testimony in a minute. But before we do, I just want to give my council colleagues who have joined us a brief opportunity to say a word of welcome. They have lots of other opportunities to provide at length their list of priorities for the economic recovery. So I'll ask colleagues to keep it brief tonight since we're definitely focusing on the public. But I do want to give you a chance to say hello. So grateful to be joined by Councillor Ed Flynn from District 2, Councillor Michael Flaherty at large, Councillor Ricardo Arroyo from District 5, and Councillor Anissa Sabi-George at large. So I'll just go to them each very briefly, and then we'll be jumping straight over. So with that, Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Chair Bach, and I just want to say thank you to you, Councillor Bach, and to your City Council staff, but also thanking the central staff as well for the important work they are doing behind the scenes. I'm also looking forward to hearing from the public about what their priorities are. And I don't have any opening statement other than the fact that I'm looking forward to hearing about the testimony from the residents across the city. Thank you, Councilor Bach.
Great. Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you. Yes.
Councillor Flaherty.
I'll be brief as well. This is an opportunity for give us their. Did I lose you there? Can you
You were cutting in and out. Now it sounds like we might have you a little clearer.
Very good. Sorry about that, Madam Chair. Technical difficulties. I'll be very brief. This is an opportunity for the public to offer testimony, give us their thoughts. I appreciate your leadership as chair. And as you know, we're all going to be focused on the recovery. We're going to have laser beam focus, quite frankly, throughout the budget process. And also our Council Pro Temp has created a new committee that I'll be chairing, working with you as the chair, Ways and Means, and all of our colleagues in their respective committees to make sure that Boston is getting their fair share, but also we're working with those that have been mostly impacted through COVID. So look forward to listening to folks and give us their thoughts. We work for them, so we'll take our cue from the residents. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Flaherty. Councillor Arroyo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make it very brief just to say thank you to those who are taking the time from their day to express to us what their budget priorities are. I deeply appreciate that feedback and that input. So thank you to everybody who took the time today to do this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam Chair, as well, and I'm grateful for the public who is with us this evening who will offer testimony. I look forward to hearing from them. I will be off camera because I am trying to get a few things done just at home, but grateful for the opportunity, and I will be listening in. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, and then I just want to explain one more time for folks that you may have heard about federal funding that's coming our way, and it's coming in a whole bunch of different buckets. One of those is a sort of, and it's over multiple years is the thing. So it's over 3 to 4 to 5 years, depending on the different buckets. But in the immediate term, what the council expects is for $215 million to come in to the city sort of general fund, and that's the kind of first tranche of that money. And then separately, there's a whole bunch that's coming to the Boston Public Schools as well. We're happy to hear comments on any of that. I think that in terms of that federal funding, as I mentioned at the start, it's probably split between supporting expansions of government services that are provided through the city government, and then some like direct grants thinking about how to get our economy back on our feet. So a broad set of things. And then of course, we've got our normal operating dollars funding our city operating budget, and that is on the table too. So I just want to be clear that these are all a connected conversation. We're having it that way at the council. As Councillor Flaherty mentioned, we've got a new COVID-19 recovery committee that's really going to be working with Ways and Means throughout this process, and then taking the baton on July 1st and continuing that oversight work throughout the year ahead. But if you're here and wondering, well, am I talking on the right topic? Anything about how we spend this money overall is welcome tonight, and we're glad to have you with us. Without further ado, I'm going to start going over to folks, and I've got a list here of people who are signed up. So the first three that we're going to go to are Lydia Lowe, James Davis, and Alex Karasik. So I'm just going to let you all in. Lydia, sorry, yeah, you're up first. So wow. if you can just identify yourself, say where you live or what your affiliation is or what organization you support, so that folks watching at home kind of know about you, and then tell us what you would like to see in recovery, and specifically, with city funds. So thank you, and federal funds that are coming through the city. So
okay.
Lydia, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you for holding this public hearing. I think it's really important, for everybody, for people to have a voice in these decisions. And, the fact that there's a lot of federal money coming into the city, I think is, it really gives us a big opportunity in a year that's been super difficult for everybody. And I think that the impact of COVID, has made the work of preventing displacement and homelessness more important than ever. So in this period, I feel that in addition to emergency immediate assistance, that we really need to prioritize acquisition of private properties, nonprofit and city acquisition of private properties to preserve for permanent affordability, for permanently affordable housing, but also for permanently affordable commercial space, because our small business districts in working class communities are really suffering and really at risk. So as the city really thinks about how to center equity, I think that we also need to adopt what we're calling an equitable acquisition strategy, which is that we need to really prioritize what it means to stabilize working class communities of color in the city. So we do appreciate, all that the city has done over the past year and more, but we just need to increase this type of work in a big way. And acquisition of private property to support small businesses, again, it's particularly important. And this is a rare opportunity that we have where the federal, funding, is recognizing the need to really support our neighborhood small businesses. But I think it has to be more than just like loans to, for right now. If we can actually have permanently affordable commercial spaces, we stabilize those businesses long-term and make sure that, that is a part of our community. So I think that I also feel, because I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself, as I'm from the Chinatown Community Land Trust. And our work is trying to do this type of work. Particularly, we've been focused on permanently affordable housing. But, as we look at Chinatown today, the stabilization of Chinatown's businesses is critical for the future. And we see actually a lot of mixed use properties that are changing hands right now. And we just cannot repeat the same problem that we saw in 2008, where, all the community loses wealth and the banks and the big, corporate developers are the ones that make out. So I think it's really important for us to also be creative, to be bold and creative, because, sometimes our existing programs, they have, they're very particular. They have all these specific guidelines, and one department works on this and one department works on that. But I think we need to think outside the box and have departments like economic development, which does small business support, and D&D, which does housing, actually work together and pool resources together so we can make things happen that, we don't usually do. I also think we should consider a specific community land trust fund to really, put more community control of development into the hands of the neighbors, whether it's permanently affordable housing and business space, but also, urban farms and gardens, and to look into the creation of a land bank, because there's so much property that will be changing hands. And nonprofits may not be all able to respond quickly enough, but the city can actually help to acquire foreclosed properties and other properties that are in trouble for disposition to nonprofit organizations later. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Lydia. Next will be James and Alex, as I said, and then we'll go to Jamie McNeil and then Karen Chen. James?
Thank you, Lydia, and also thank you, Councillor Bach. My name is James Davis, and I'm a Boston resident and voter at 33 Buswell Street. I'm here to ask the City Council to prioritize funding that may be freed by the Biden administration for research into psychedelics and their applications for depression, opioid abuse, and other ailments. I'm asking the council specifically to deprioritize arrests for all controlled substances, as well as the cultivation of psychedelic plants. I'm sure you all have received a lot of emails from our coalition, Bay Staters for Natural Medicine, and a lot of phone calls, and I was grateful to meet with Lauren just last week and have great productive conversations with the council. We believe that this is really essential to the biomedical capital of the world's innovation in years to come, and that Boston should follow the lead of Somerville, Cambridge, Northampton, East Hampton, and almost 6 other countries that have put treating drugs as a public health issue over treating them as an incarceral issue. This is a very personal issue to me. My cousin suffers from opioid addiction and has been in and out of jail and the rehabilitation system dozens of times. My uncle privately wonders if we're going to lose him to fentanyl. He's lost his custody of his daughters. Again, when he goes to jail, he loses his job and he loses the social safety net that was helping him overcome the addiction. Fortunately, ibogaine, a West African plant, has proven benefits for reducing the amount of withdrawal symptoms that opioid addicts experience when they're moving away from their addiction. And there's peer-reviewed evidence showing that psychedelic plants like psilocybin are 4 times more effective at treating major depression than conventional SSRIs. So, as you know, the hospital in your district is studying Mass General Hospital's new Center for Psychedelic Research is studying these treatments. We already know that there's peer-reviewed evidence showing that adults are using them safely and getting tremendous benefits, potentially benefits for Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injuries, and even disorders like dementia. And so this is what's best for Boston's economy locally, but also for all the small entrepreneurs that want to experiment in the space to know that their applications for those grants from the federal government are not going to be stigmatized. And also so that ordinary adults in Boston are treated like adults and not arrested and incarcerated for possession of controlled substances. So with that, I think I've said my piece, and we really appreciate you all considering this incredibly important issue of public safety, but also how the city spends its money and allocates taxpayer resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James. Alex, and then Jamie, and then Karen, and then it'll be Richard Guerra. Alex?
Thank you, Councillor Bach and James Davis. I'm also a member of Bay Staters for Natural Medicine and as a resident of Boston. And I'm also looking for funding to be redirected for research for psilocybin and entheogenic plants as well. James covered a lot of where we stand on this issue. And for me, it's a very personal issue as well. I was almost killed a few years ago in a robbery in Chicago, and I experienced post-traumatic stress disorder from that as a result. And through some of the services of Boston and therapy I was able to get, along with using some of these plant medicines, I was able to overcome this, and I'm in a personally much better place. I know a lot of my friends and neighbors are going through a lot of mental health issues at the moment with what's going on in COVID, and I know some people who have served in the military and people who have even died from drug overdose over the years that I grew up with. And I think that this issue dramatically affects all of these people on one level or another. And I would really like to see a lot of this changed in the near future, if possible, as a resident. I think it's definitely possible. And I think that the decisions the council makes are going to be hugely impactful on deciding the course of things for Boston and the state as a whole. And this could also impact the entire country ultimately. So for me, this is something that I'd really like to see changed. And I think that this council can help us do the right thing and move in the right direction. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Alex. Next up, Jamie, and then Karen, and then as I said, Richard. After Jamie and Karen, I will let Councilors Julia Mejia and Lydia Edwards have also joined us, and so I'll let them also say a word of welcome. Just Councilors Mejia and Edwards, we're letting the public do their list tonight, so we're not doing extensive comments on our priorities, but we'd love to have you guys each say a word after Karen. So first, now we go to Jamie.
Thank you so much, Councilor, and thank you to all the councilors on this call and anyone from the Janey administration who's on. This is so great to see. You know, this is democracy in action. It's just great to be able to have this opportunity to get some ideas out there. So my name is Jamie McNeil. I'm with Local 26, the Hotel and Food Workers Union here in Boston. Don't have to probably repeat what you've all heard for the past 14 months. Hospitality industry is the worst hit industry from COVID. And when I say the hospitality industry, what I actually mean is the hotel workers, the people who live in the city, the people who make the city what it is. And so really, you know, I'm here to testify today, you know, not with a concrete proposal, but to really plant a flag around how an equitable recovery looks in the hospitality industry, and that if there are ARP funds, we all know the ARP actually outlines, you know, I don't know what the exact words are, but it more or less says, you know, aiding the tourism industry and other hard-hit industries We know those industries are made up of people, workers who live in our neighborhoods. So we want to make sure that any funds going to this industry actually go to the people who make the industry great, the workers, and really benefit those workers who have struggled over the last 14 months. And at the same time, understanding that that hotels have to keep the lights on as well. But there's a balance there, right? And so, we would love to see, and again, we have a specific proposal, but we want to work with you all and with the Jane administration. We would like to see precedent to those funds, that we really are rewarding both the union and non-union hotels that have done the right thing and actually committed to their workers, that when the business comes back, that they'll come back. And not only that, but keep this city marketable and keep this a place where people want to bring business, that we don't have 500-room hotels run by 5 people, right? And so they're actually bringing back the old staffing guidelines that they had in 2019, that you'd come to expect going to a wedding, going to a ball, going to stay at a hotel for a weekend. So those are both at the core of really just equity, right? It's making sure we're rewarding the good actors by using these funds to make sure that they've both done those things, that they've committed to, and again, I defer to people much smarter than me on the attestation on what that looks like, but attesting to bring the workers back, and obviously we have the union agreements, but we know non-union hotels have done the same thing, and really bringing it back so we do have a marketable city, and we do have a complement of workers actually working at these hotels, making these events happen in a safe way. So again, I know it's the beginning of the conversation. I know it's super early, but I just I want to thank you, Councilor Bach, and all the councilors for having this opportunity. And again, just want to plant the flag and be at the table for when these conversations happen, that we're really building back Boston's hospitality industry in a hospitable way and a equitable way. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jamie, and to all the hotel workers. Next up is Karen Chen, and then, as I said, I'll go briefly to my colleagues, Councilors Mejia and Edwards. Karen.
Thank you, Councilor Bach, and really appreciate this opportunity. And this is what democracy looks like. And my name is Karen Chen. I'm with the Chinese Progressive Association. We're based in Chinatown. We serve Chinese Americans in the greater Boston area. We're also part of Right to the City Boston, which anchored by CPA, Alternative Community and Environment, City Life, and New England United for Justice. And, we have been, in this talking about, equitable recovery for a long time. It's only equitable when we actually put money right into the program. And I think that with the American Rescue Plan, it's a really important opportunity to really put money into, issues that are, or to really, make it transformative, right? Actually lay foundations for long-term change, how the city will look like, in the next 20 or 30 years. So, so we're here, I think, similar to some of the people said earlier, we're here to talk about how would we invest in the people, and that making sure that, Boston will be, a vibrant city where actually, what makes Boston interesting is all the different neighborhoods. But we also know that a lot of these neighborhoods are at risk of displacement, whether it's for, sometimes it's because of improvement in infrastructure that the community fought for, like having a new subway station, right? Having a new stop, the commuter rail. And then other times, it's because, people just, band together, make it a safe community. And then I think also there's communities that, like Chinatown, been experiencing influx of development and luxury development in particular. And then, so in a lot of these neighborhoods, there are a significant number of people who are paying more than 30% of the income towards rent. And I think that for some neighborhoods, during the pandemic, especially the month there wasn't, the federal stimulus money, people are paying possibly, 80, sometimes 90% of the income towards rent. So I think that this issue has been talked about for a long time in the city. And this is an opportunity to really invest, into these neighborhoods, in like Chinatown, East Boston, and we all also know that areas in Dorchester, Fuse Corner to Savin Hill, Mattapan, areas of Roxbury, I think Charlestown, Austin, Brighton as well. And pretty much you can find every neighborhood in the Boston area that are at risk. So I think that it'll be important to put money into these areas, really focus and experiment, right? And, can we actually, really do something, like Lydia said, big, in a big way to save these neighborhoods. And and you can set goals, right? In these stabilization zones, you can set goals where you put a certain amount of money, to nonprofits or community land trusts to acquire land for public good. And also you can start kind of like setting goals for displacement prevention, goals, and like, decreasing, have some sort of benchmark on, number of people, that you want to have pay, 30% of the income towards rent, like setting benchmarks that, like, if we're at, if we had 30% now, in 2 years, maybe we can work towards, 50%, right? And then also, really, and it could be in forms of increasing affordable housing, making sure that the affordability matches the community income, or it could actually be funding for deepening affordability. And then also, you can also use it as a way, when I say transformative, right? How can we, change, this practice that, housing and land is used for profit only, when it should be, a human right, a basic human right. So it's like piloting policies that help stabilize these zones, like tenant option to purchase, just cost eviction, rent control, or we even experiment something like, rent to own programs, where you actually build wealth, not just wealth of individuals, but actually the community, as a whole. And then also on top of that, we also know that in areas where there's a lot of development, we should expect more of the developers or the investors. And we know that, while a lot of our people's income have, increased, or many working people, but the wealthiest people actually have, profited during the pandemic. We should demand more of these, of the corporate world, or corporate investors, and establish programs. Like if you're gonna develop, in these areas, maybe there should be requirements of what wages should be and what kind of benefits that should be, so that we don't have, another kind of, seaport district where you see, huge gap of in terms of income and wealth. So I think that, these are some of the things that we hope that, the city will look into, as kind of just to experiment. And then I think that, and also, maybe that would also could become, long-term investments or long-term strategies, to stabilize at-risk neighborhoods.
Great, thank you so much, Karen. I'm now just going to give my colleagues who have joined us a moment to just say a word of greeting. So Councillor Mejia, then Councillor Edwards, and we've also been joined by Councillor Andrea Campbell from District 4. Councillor Mejia, did you want to say a quick word?
No, I'm here to listen. So I'm here to take my marching orders from the people who are doing the work or living the realities, and happy to be here and taking notes. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Edwards?
Hi, everyone. Honored to be here to listen, to learn. I just honestly want to take as many notes, understand what you need, and do our best to adjust our budget asks to what you guys are demanding. So thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank all of you for showing up. It is truly democracy in action. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And Councillor Campbell?
Thank you, Councillor Bach, and of course, thank you for your leadership in creating this space. I just saw Karen was testifying, great to see you. But yes, here, like all the other council colleagues, to listen, take notes. My team is also on, so that as we go through the process, we have a deep sense of what community and residents want, need, deserve, and are entitled to. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And next up from the public is Richard Guerra, and then on deck will be Lauren Chambers. Richard?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hi, I'm Richard Guerra, Cincy Media Group and Decriminalized Nature Massachusetts, and Bay Staters for Natural Medicine, representing all those groups today. I am here to strongly support a resolution deprioritizing arrests for all controlled substances and cultivation of psychedelic plants. And ultimately, seeing the war on drugs end means a lot to me. I spent my entire life embedded in the arts, live music, visual art, performance art here in Boston, in media, printed film, digital, social, in community, festival culture, and legal cannabis advocacy. When I think of the common thread that enhances my understanding and perspective that ties all those things together, I do think of entheogenic plants and medicines. As a undergraduate at Boston University, I was arrested for nonviolent first offense of distributing psilocybin mushrooms, cannabis, and cocaine to other students. This was in 2010. This condemned me to serve 20 months in South Bay Correctional Facility, followed by a year of parole and 2 years of probation. Sadly, even though I later completed my degree and had a support network that many lack, I battled anxiety and PTSD for many years after incarceration. But with the help of EMDR therapy, along with the intentional use of psilocybin, MDMA, and other entheogenic plants, I was able to heal from this trauma and rededicate myself to the fight for decriminalizing these therapeutic substances. After all, entheogenic plants have long improved my spiritual relationship with nature, art, media, legal advocacy that have defined my career. And it's time that others in the community can use them safely and equitably without fear. I will add that miraculously, my felonies were dropped due to the anti-Duke drug lab scandal. Quite an interesting situation there. I learned firsthand that the incarceration and criminalization of controlled substances, especially entheogenic plants and fungi, has severely destructive effects on the hearts and minds of our people and their families. When I went through the criminal justice system at South Bay in our city, I was lucky enough to have a support network, education, and sobriety to make it through all that. So many in our city do not have that support, and we know that drug charges and records like that make it nearly impossible for our people, many are who are young, mentally unwell, or addicts, to recover. And we see more criminal behavior and recidivism emerge. I believe that to see the city of Boston take a stand on this issue and follow suit with Cambridge, Somerville, and Northampton will be the most significant catalyst for positive and compassionate changes across the state and the country. And by the way, I'm in Brighton, Oak Square. Thank you so much for this. I appreciate all you.
Great. Thank you so much, Richard. Next up is Lauren Chambers.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you great.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, and thank you so much, Madam Chair, and also to Richard. My name is Lauren Chambers. I'm the staff technologist at the ACLU of Massachusetts. So rather than advocating tonight for areas where Boston's budget should be focused, which I'll leave to community leaders that we clearly already have out in abundance, tonight I want to point out some areas where it should be reduced, in particular policing. So the ACLU recently published analysis that catalogs the extent of the burden that police overtime in Boston places on the city budget, and also outlines the really ridiculous obstacles that we currently face to changing policy to actually control that spending. But as I believe the council is already familiar with those data and also with generally the budgetary landscape around policing, tonight I'm not showing any charts. Instead, I want to respond directly to a request that Councillor Bach made on Monday during the community question session, where she asked and requested that advocates share, instead of just how much we want to see the police budget cut, actually how we can do that. And so I want to respond to that by saying that I mirror her frustration with the situation. So just as the council's hands are clearly tied when it comes to cutting police budgets, advocates are currently left guessing when it comes to understanding how different policing practices are actually using taxpayer money. And so because of that, I wanted to share 5 priorities that we've identified that we believe are currently within the purview of the council, which should be hopefully immediately adopted to increase transparency around policing. And so those are: 1, breaking down the BPD's minimum staffing levels and the formula that's used to calculate them. I know Councillor Arroyo has already been trying to pursue that data. 2, publishing better data on 911 response. So currently they're publishing just daily counts of how many 911 calls they're getting, but not details about the type of 911 call, the location, or about the number of police that are responding. So we'd love to have that data available. 3 would be to publish geographic data on where BPD resources and initiatives are distributed across Boston neighborhoods to understand where policing is happening and at what level. 4 is requiring that the BPD publish more detailed data on police incidents, reversing a record system change that took place in fall 2019. So we actually talked about this at a council hearing a few weeks ago with Councillor Campbell and the Committee on Public Safety. And 5 is to dedicate city resources to publicly analyzing the data on policing that is already available, because this work shouldn't be done exclusively by volunteers, advocates, and university groups, as it has been over the past few years. It would be great if there was a city office dedicated to that sort of work. And additionally, I also urge that the council insist that Mayor Janey and her administration make public their priorities around equity and fiscal responsibility as they're negotiating the police contracts. As we know, a lot of these questions are currently tied up in police contracts, and it would be great to have an eye on what's going on there. I'll also briefly share my disappointment that while the BPD is the second largest line item in the whole budget, we have only 1 scheduled hearing on it this session compared to the 8 hearings that are scheduled on BPS, which is the first item in the budget. And we really encourage the council to understand that reining in police budgets must be one of the priorities this budget season. Absolutely. So thank you for your consideration, and the ACLU definitely looks forward to continuing this conversation over the coming months.
Great, thank you, Lauren. And I will say last year we made the mistake of bundling it with fire and EMS. So I would say it's a step in the direction, that direction. But great, thank you so much. Next up, sorry, I neglected to let the next person through. We'll hear from Jennifer Stell. And then just while Jennifer's coming in, it'll be Jason Manisco.
Hello.
Hi, Jennifer, we can hear you.
Hi, Councillor Bach. Thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to read my statement just to keep to time. So I apologize if it seems kind of sterile, but I just want to make sure I got in everything that I wanted to say tonight, because it's very important to me. So to begin with, my name is Jennifer Stell. I'm a mother, grandmother, registered voter, and registered nurse here in Massachusetts. I'm here to ask the City Council to officially deprioritize all arrests for controlled substances, as well as cultivation of psychedelic plants. Over 400 people have contacted the City Council asking them to officially bar the use of taxpayer resources for the investigation and incarceration of people for drug possession and exchanging psychedelic plants. The people of the city overwhelmingly believe that we should treat drugs as an issue of public health and not criminal prosecution, which is why this should be a high priority for the council. I believe firmly in this issue because since I was 8 years old, I have suffered from debilitating cluster headaches, which is one of the most painful chronic conditions known in medicine. I've also suffered from migraines, and both were very painful and were daily and led me to an addiction to opioids to manage my pain. I was also arrested, tried, and convicted on cannabis charges when I was 17, which has had very heavy implications in my life. Entheogen medicines like psilocybin and ibogaine have actually changed my life by helping me manage my excruciating cluster headaches and migraines and overcome the addiction that was standing in the way of my best life. But because these plants are illegal, access is limited and are often difficult for me to obtain, which means many days of excruciating pain until I'm able to find them. This affects me as a parent, grandparent, it affects my job, and it affects my overall quality of health, not to mention the absolute risk I'm taking by trying to obtain them. Today, there are many people suffering from anxiety and depression, and it's only gotten worse since COVID. There are numerous studies proving that entheogen plants help with treatment-resistant anxiety and depression, migraines, and cluster headaches, as well as helping those struggling with addiction to heroin, cocaine, meth, alcohol, and cigarettes. And I'm one that can attest to that. This is why I'm urging the council to hear its voters and place decriminalization on the top of their priority list. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Next up is Jason.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Manisco. I'm a public health student at Northeastern University, a veteran of the United States Army, and most importantly, a resident of Brighton. I strongly support Bay Staters for Natural Medicine's resolution deprioritizing arrests for all controlled substances and the cultivation of psychedelic plants. It is time for the city of Boston to grab the torch and lead the country in the fight against the drug war by deprioritizing arrests for all controlled substances. The stigma associated with psychedelic plants and all other controlled substances prevents those suffering from seeking care. Here in Massachusetts, millennials with people born between 1981 and 1996 are more likely to suffer from depression than their peers across the country. A 2020 meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials dating back 2 decades found that psychedelic-assisted therapy is highly effective in treating PTSD, depression, anxiety linked to terminal illness, and anxiety linked to autism. A November 2020 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association found 1 in 2 patients put major depression in remission after only 2 psilocybin therapy sessions, which is 4 times more effective than conventional medication. Psychedelics are effective medicines when they are not demonized by the drug war and prohibition. I must ask this council, should a resident of Boston face criminal punishment for trying to heal? Deprioritizing arrests for all controlled substances and cultivation of psychedelic plants will allow the veteran who has no job, no health care, no hope, the chance to heal. As the biomedical capital of the nation, Boston should take this step. It would signal to the Commonwealth and the nation that Boston prioritizes mental well-being and the public's health over the antiquated view of prohibition. As my elected officials, I urge you to pass this resolution. Boston hails itself as an epicenter for progressive politics, acceptance, and humanity. It is time to finally act like it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jason. Next up is Hope Marion. Hope?
Thank you so much for your time and for having us here today. I'm also here to show support for deprioritizing the arrest for all controlled substances and cultivation of psychedelic plants. I am a resident in the Commonwealth and also a patient in Boston. I'm here because it's also impacted me on a very personal level. I've had migraine attacks since I was 10 years old. And at one point I was having severe migraines 4 times a week with headaches constantly. And in my 26th month of this and working with a huge team of neurologists in Boston, I reached literally no more options. And I approached them after seeing National Geographic talk about using it for cluster headaches. So about 5 to 6 weeks later, I no longer had these intense experiences. And it's been an amazing alternative option for me. So I appreciate you listening to everyone else that's here to support from Bay Staters, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Hope. Next, sorry, just also getting through. Next up, we've got Miyabi Shields. And sorry, Miyabi, if I've mispronounced that, please.
Oh, no, you got it close enough. It's Miyabi, like Karate Kid. Thank you. Thanks for hearing and for the opportunity to speak. I've actually never done this before, and I do really feel like this is, it's great to be involved, and it's great to be heard. So thank you. I'm Miyabi Shields. I'm a registered voter in Boston. I live in JP. I'm a biochemist. I've been researching drugs in the brain at the molecular level for 11 years now. My PhD is in pharmaceutical sciences and the system in the brain that interacts with cannabis. And I am also here in support of Bay Staters for Natural Medicine to ask the council to deprioritize arrests for controlled substances, as well as cultivation of psychedelic plants. So I think other people have mentioned, and I could spend the next few minutes sharing statistics and data from recent scientific journal articles. They show a huge therapeutic potential for psychedelics, or I could focus on the many academic perspectives that state very clearly that ending the war on drugs is the first necessary step towards racial justice in our country. But those are things that you could Google on your own, and I do highly encourage you to do so if you need more information on it. Instead, I'm going to tell you something about myself that I used to feel deeply ashamed about and fearful, because it's a highly stigmatized topic, especially for someone who's a scientist. And I've struggled with my mental health my entire life. I've been prescribed with many different types of pharmaceutical drugs. They do work for some people, but for me, they made my symptoms much, much worse. The years that I spent on those medications were really painful and really confusing. And at the end of it, I tried to kill myself with the same pills that were supposed to be helping me. I don't have the words or the capability to encompass how much suffering a person has to endure before they get to that place, but I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. And I'm only here today because I found plant medicines and they allowed me to begin the journey of healing. And, you know, after only one single use, psychedelics permanently changed my perspective on my life and, you know, gave me different insights on what my future could look like. I specifically studied neuropharmacology and the intersection of neuropsychiatric drugs and behavior so that I could fully understand what happened to me. And I've concluded that by far plant medicines are more therapeutically beneficial for me than their synthetic pharmaceutical alternatives. I'm definitely not alone in that. I just happen to also be able to explain why at the molecular level. And, you know, I would be happy to answer any questions about like the substantial scientific evidence behind them or the academic perspectives and the benefits of decriminalization for in terms of social equity and in terms of like helping with racial discrimination in our country. And I have reached out directly to many of you. So you do have my contact information in your emails, and I would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening to this and also for the work that you do for our city. I love living here. I've been here since I started my PhD and I love it here. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. You know, this is obviously not really a talk back because we're trying to give people a space to share today, but I want to thank you and also recognize you sharing a really painful story. And I think a number of the folks who have testified have spoken to personal experiences that I just, you know, we're not sort of doing the dialogue thing, but I just want to acknowledge that it does take courage to come into this space and speak about all that. So thank you for joining us tonight. Next up is Hamza Mahmoud, and then it'll be Kathleen Patron. Hamza?
Thank you. My name is Hamza Mahmoud, a Boston voter, a resident, a student at UMass Boston, and I'm also a volunteer for the Bay Staters Coalition. Like everybody else, I am also here to ask the City Council to officially deprioritize arrest for all controlled substances, as well as the cultivation of psychedelic plants. Again, I don't have to state any stats because a lot of my partners have already done that. But I just want to say that like plant medicines such as psilocybin, mushrooms, have helped me become at peace with life, just like a lot of other people. It's helped me deal with depression, childhood trauma, all that stuff. And it just sucks that like things that are so helpful for people, for their mental health, that they are just like, that people cannot have access to those without like dealing with the laws that we have in place that are just like absolutely unfair. Recently, one of my best friends is going through a suicidal episode, and I would like to help them out, just become at peace with themselves just the way that I have, but like, I can't do that without the fear of being arrested, without facing the laws, that just like make it so hard for me to help my loved ones. Like it just sucks at times. I'm not gonna say too much because all my partners have said that, but like also I would like to see substances such as psychedelic plants be decriminalized so I can help more people that I love just be better, be more present with life, and just be at peace with themselves, and like not take their life away because, you know, things are not working out for them, and then other traditional medicines are not working out for them. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Hamza. Kathleen? Just give Kathleen a second. Kathleen, I see you on my screen, but I don't see you or hear you. All right, I'm just gonna hold tight for a second because I think we're waiting on Kathleen to activate, and then I think we've heard from everybody who's on the line here. We do have a few more folks signed up to testify. So if you are watching this and you're planning to join us to testify at some point, now would be a good point. Although I'll definitely be holding it open until at least 7:30. I'm going to call at the moment, I'm going to call a 1-minute recess just to try to figure out what's going on our tech side with Kathleen. So just recessing for a moment. Okay, I think we have Kathleen, so I'm unrecessing, Candace. Great, Kathleen Patron from the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization.
Hi, everyone. Kathleen Patron, lead organizer, executive director of the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. Apologies, jumping from Zoom to Zoom, phone call to phone call. I'm sure you all can relate. So I'm here just to say that this is a once in a lifetime, once in a generational opportunity in terms of funds coming to the city of Boston, and that GBIO doesn't necessarily at this point have very specific asks on how the money is spent. But what we are interested in is working with a city council and with a city of Boston that wants to be bold, that wants to be creative, and that wants to put this money to maximum impact, to make sure that a once in a lifetime generational opportunity to deal with some of the issues of the COVID-19 crisis that have primarily affected Black and Brown communities really go to benefit people on the ground. And I think there's two ways that this can happen. One is that we are creative, or second, we make sure that the money gets spent and gets out the door, so to speak, in a way that we then are eligible for more federal dollars. Because if we don't get the money out the door, we get penalized. And we want to make sure that we're thinking creatively about how to use this money for maximum impact. And the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization is very much looking forward to working with the City Council to make sure that that's done in a real way. One thing, for example, is broadband. Are we going to think about free public Wi-Fi for Bostonians, or and setting up potentially municipal broadband? Or does this money then get pumped into corporations such as Comcast? And that takes a level of thinking creatively about how we use those dollars. And so GBIO going forward is very much looking forward to working with each of you and trying to think about how does this affect real everyday people on the ground, to make sure that those dollars go to impact the greatest number of people.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thanks for joining us. All right. I think with that, that as I mentioned before, I think everybody who has signed in tonight has had a chance to say a few words. So what we'll do now is we'll go into a sort of proper recess. I will stay on until 7:30 because I want to make sure that if somebody comes a little bit late and they want to get their comment on the record, that we do that. Other counselors who have other places you got to be obviously can review the tape later. But I just want to thank everybody for testifying tonight and say that if you are watching this after the fact, this is very much the beginning, not the end at all, of public testimony opportunity. And as I think I mentioned, we'll be having about 35 department hearings and working sessions throughout the sort of 6 weeks ahead, considering sort of what a revised budget should look like in June. Also expecting kind of the formal orders for this federal money that's coming. So you're welcome to testify at any of those hearings, and at the 6 p.m. hearings we'll be holding more towards the end of the hearing schedule, which is on May 25th and June 3rd. May 25th focused on BPS, but you can come with anything at 6 p.m. and then June 3rd focused on any departments at 6 p.m. But along the way, you can come to any hearing. You can find all this info at boston.gov/council-budget. You can email ccc.wm@boston.gov for more info. You can find out how to testify at boston.gov/budget-testify. So we would love to have you involved along the way. I do think that, to Kathleen's point, and some of the creative things that we heard tonight, you know, from the hotel workers and from Chinatown, both CPA and the Land Trust and others talking about kind of, you know, we don't yet quite have the definition, but we know that we want to go big and do something transformational. I think that the council is on that same wavelength. I also think that what Kathleen just alluded to, the fact that we need this federal money to like be utilized and hit the ground running and have a real impact on people in the moment where we're kind of, you know, really at the dip in this crisis, means that we all should, you know, have these conversations proactively over the coming weeks, and not push it off too much, because you know, people are counting on us to put these funds to work for the sake of the people of Boston. So really appreciate everybody coming tonight, and also again to the many folks, particularly speaking on behalf of the Bay Staters group, for sharing your stories and your testimony and pushing us on the council. So with that, I will go into a formal recess, but we will unrecess if further members of the public join us between now and 7:30. So this hearing is recessed. Okay, I am unrecessing again. As we have been joined by Mr. Tom Callahan. So I'm going to give him a moment to speak. Tom, you have the floor.
Councilor Bach, thank you very much. And I'm sorry to unrecess this. I had another meeting and wasn't able to join until just before you hit the gavel. So I appreciate the opportunity to get in some testimony. Like I did hear Kathleen Patron, and I think like Kathleen, you know, we're still looking at this as well and trying to understand the requirements from the federal government. But I wanted to basically say two things that we feel at MAHA. I should introduce myself first of all. Tom Callahan from the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance. We're a Dorchester-based nonprofit that works to close the racial homeownership gap, works with low and moderate income first-time homebuyers and first-generation homebuyers. So the two major points that I think would be good places to use some federal money would be, one is this concept of first generation homebuyers. We launched a program 2 years ago called Stash, Saving Toward Affordable and Sustainable Homeownership, that is reaching a new category that we've defined as first generation homebuyers, those whose parents who didn't have the advantage of owning their own homes, and therefore a lot of those families didn't benefit from the intergenerational transfer of wealth that happens when homeownership has been passed down through the generations. So this is a pilot program that started with Boston Children's Hospital money. The city of Boston has been very supportive of it. And this program is something we have big ambitions for. We think it could be a $100 million program. It started modestly with 200 homebuyers, 21 already purchased, 97% have been homebuyers of color. We are very excited about the potential. It provides basically match savings. Homebuyers save $2,000 and get a match of a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 match. Our ambitions are to try to create a 10-to-1 match program so that people can really have extra buying power in a really difficult buying market. So being race conscious, helping support first time and first generation homebuyers, I think is really a key way as we come out of this pandemic to help people compete in what is going to be still a very challenging housing market, and help people sort of put folks on a level playing field with people with more assets that they bring to the table. So that's one, I think, major priority for us. Another would be homeowners, existing homeowners who have been hit hard with this pandemic and have maybe had a mortgage deferment, or are otherwise struggling to figure out how to sort of catch up with their mortgage servicer, with their bank. So I think there's a couple elements of this. One is having enough resources so that there's enough nonprofit capacity to assist those homeowners who may be struggling to restore their mortgage, restore their mortgage and catch up and not be in the hole. And also, some people may have been able to do that, but they may have deferred maintenance. So if there's flexibility, not just paying off the arrears at the bank or the back taxes, or all those things are important, of course, to get people whole. But there may be a subset of homeowners who have been able to, scrimp and save and be able to maintain their mortgage payments, but they've let other things, deferred maintenance, for instance, on porches or roofs or whatever. So some flexibility, some grant programs for those homeowners, so that we don't lose particularly lower income homeowners, Black and Brown, Asian homeowners in the city. Typically in crises like this, and we never had a pandemic in the last 100 years, but in the foreclosure crisis of 08, homeowners of color were hit harder than white homeowners, and the racial wealth homeownership gap widened because more Black and Brown and Asian homeowners were foreclosed upon. So we don't want to see that happen coming out of the pandemic. And I think putting in those supports to existing homeowners and a network of nonprofit counselors that can reach those folks and help them negotiate with their mortgage servicer and give them a fighting chance to sustain homeownership tenure over the long term. So those are the things I wanted to say, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. And thanks for all the work that Maha does. All right. With that, we're going to re-enter recess. And again, we will be here until 7:30. So thanks. Hello, everyone. It is 7:30, and I think we are going to be done for the night. So with that, I will just say again that folks should check out boston.gov/council-budget to find out the whole schedule of hearings and come testify at another. And this hearing of the City Council's Ways and Means Committee is now adjourned. Thank you all.